Thank you. Our honored guest, Cabinet Secretary Owalo, Chairman, Vice Chancellor of the Aga Khan University. Distinguished guests, allow me to just stand on existing protocols in the interest of time. I know we have very many distinguished guests here, but welcome everybody and good morning. It is very energizing, I have to say, to be in a room full of such tech-focused people. We were having a conversation downstairs, and I find it very invigorating. A few weeks ago, I was just saying a few weeks ago, I had my surgery here at the hospital, just across the road. And they were telling me that the operating theater of the future is going to be run by one operator and a dog. And the operator's job will be to feed the dog. And the dog's job will be to make sure that the operator doesn't touch any of the equipment. That's the future we're facing. If you're fascinated by robotics, as I am, this is a captivating image. If you're focused more on healthcare, it's still an image of some promise, of possibilities, of profitability, of productivity. Whatever your point of view, I think the fact is that we are living in a world where technology is changing our lives. The so-called fourth industrial revolution, I hate that term, whatever we call it these days. It's the Internet of Things. It's changing processes in our organizations. It's changing processes in our societies, and it is transformational. But I think, as President Suleiman mentioned in his remarks, this is transformation through disruption. These things are disruptive technologies. And I don't know if some of you remember the story of the Wizard of Oz. This is the story about the young girl and her dog. There's always a dog in my stories. There's this young girl and a dog who was transformed to another world, a magic world. People sometimes forget that story actually began with a storm. It's a tornado that started this transformation. And it was a storm that uplifted her entire house and the dog and moved it to another world, transforming her life, but killing a wicked witch in the process. And this was transformation that transformed one person's life, but disrupted somebody else's life in the process. And so I think the question that I want to leave with the group today, as a development practitioner, is how do we make sure that this transformation, this disruption that we are planning, is actually going to lead to development in our region, for our people, for our societies. When we talk about development and transformational, digital transformation, much of the narrative that we are getting today, led obviously from the global north, is about the potential for increased productivity, increased efficiency, increased growth, and all of that is to the good. But from our vantage point here in East Africa, from our vantage point here in the global south, we should also be asking, what does this transformation do for the nature of the jobs that it's going to create? In the digital value chain of the digital economy, where are our organizations, our industries, our people going to fit in? What does this do to income inequality? It's clear that digitalization has created jobs for us in the region. That we can all see. And if we look at some of the high-cost countries, US, UK, Europe, Asia in some cases, they have pushed down some jobs because they now have access through digital technology to push these jobs down to low-cost countries. And so we now see lots of these business process outsourcing units. We see call centers, we see technical support centers, and that's all to the good in terms of creating jobs. And increasingly, as we talk about digitalization in the current phase, we are beginning to see these so-called micro tasks being pushed down. Data capture, image tagging, data analysis. These are jobs partly related to AI and machine learning, jobs that are partly related to promoting goods and services. I suppose the question I'm asking is, when you look at these jobs, and I visit a lot of these operations where I see these people working. When you look at these jobs, the question you have to ask yourself is, these are largely repetitive jobs at the low value end of a bigger value chain. And young people, talented people in our region, highly qualified, are being forced to take jobs which are somewhat precarious occupations. They're subject to algorithmic monitoring. They're subject to very tight targets, high hours, low income, very little upward mobility. And I ask myself, how is this different from mining minerals from our states here and adding value somewhere else? How is that different? Now, of course, jobs are jobs, and every job is valued. And we use our digital applications, whether we are ordering a taxi or a domestic service or a delivery service. We see somebody delivering, somebody's involved in the work, and we see, well, that's the job. But those jobs and those tasks were always done in a conventional sector, in our conventional labor markets. And today they're being done in the same labor markets. Never mind the app. It's the same jobs being done in the same sectors. The point I'm making is that there is actually very little sectoral shift. There is very little strategic transformation that this technology is actually bringing for us as we see it today. And of course, when you look at some of these workers today, they are treated as self-employed, or they have contracts which are 0-hour contracts. And so they don't have the social benefits or the employment rights that some of the traditional sectors used to have. So I don't want to sound pessimistic, because in our own organization, in the Aga Khan Development Network, we are already seeing and implementing a ton of stuff that is allowing or leveraging of technology to improve our productivity, to improve our access to our beneficiaries, to basically promote development across the work that we're doing. So we see that whether it's in healthcare, in human capital development, in education, in support services, and we're seeing technology bringing for us innovation, which is remarkable because it gives us far wider access, both in urban and rural settings. And we're very excited by the opportunity that the technology is bringing, for example, in rural settings, where we can see the value of getting better connectivity between farmers and their markets, or improving yields, and all that's being done through technology. But the question still remains, which is, how can we be sure that this digital transformation that we are all embarked on is actually going to lead to development in our region? And I think this is an area where of development economics that needs a lot more work. What exactly is the link between digital transformation, innovation, and strategic transformation and structural change? That's an area of economics that we are seeing very little work on. I mean, clearly we have tech people here, and I'm probably preaching to the wrong group. But I think a lot more work needs to be done to understand the value chains in this digital economy. Exactly where in the value chain are we positioning ourselves if we are to avoid the issue that I was talking about earlier? Now, you will hear, I'm sure, over the next couple of days, because you're all optimistic, positive people, that this is going to be a driver for growth, and it is. Technology and digital transformation is a driver for growth, but it is not automatically a driver for inclusion. And the question I guess I am posing for the Cabinet Secretary as well as for others is, how could we be sure that a rising tide is going to lift all boats, and that we don't leave others behind, and that we don't increase the disparities in our societies? And this is going to need intervention. Political intervention is going to need policy intervention that can at least address policy issues on a number of fronts. uh, including the question of building skills. What skills are we building? Are we making sure that our skills are aligned to the marketplace of the future? We do a lot of work in education, and I can see there is a lot to be done in this area of making sure that we are aligning the skills we build in our markets here, in our people here, to the market that we are preparing them for. The second policy area that I think is going to be very important is investment. How do we make sure that we guide investment to infrastructure in the right place? Today, we can see that this digital transformation is not benefiting the world equally. The benefits to this world of this transformation are not equal. And the reason they're not equal is because there are parts of the world today where they don't have access to some of this technology, where they don't have access to the internet. Africa has a gap. And this is why the Aga Khan Fund for Development was one of the first movers of bringing the undersea fiber optic cable to East Africa, which transformed internet access in Kenya and the rest of East Africa. And going back to skills, the Aga Khan Foundation has been running a program on upskilling digital skills. And so a lot of our programming is focused on dealing with some of these issues. The third area of policy that I think is going to be very relevant as we look forward is how do we embed and promote the use of technology in our home industries? How do we make sure that we can use AI to improve our tourism and travel business? How do we make sure that we use digital twins to improve the yields of our farmers? How do we make sure that we connect our smallholders to the markets that they're preparing for? I mean, these are all issues where we should embed that technology, not for someone in another part of the world, but here in our industries. And finally, I think there is the issue of improving competitiveness as we deal with technology. When I talk about competitiveness, of course, I'm talking about trade barriers and borders. It's a topic for another day. We will not spend time on it today. But making sure that technology can support digital payments across different countries, making sure that we have a robust enough tax system for cross-jurisdictional transactions. This is becoming a big issue everywhere in the world. We have big tech companies making tons of money and not being taxed where they are necessarily making the money. And in the same way, I find you can see a lot of tech companies are mining data from our markets to monetize value for their shareholders. How do we make sure that we are not just opening up another form of digital colonialism here? Those are policy issues that we need to think about. In closing, I'm conscious of time. We see technology transformation as absolutely a game changer for Africa. This is going to has the potential to propel our communities, our societies. There is a role here for the private sector, for private sector finance. There's a role here equally for government in terms of policy, providing the right enabling environment, providing the right regulatory environment. But as we deal with those issues, I want to just go back to the image that I started with. The image of this one man and a dog, whether it's in the operating theater or whether it's in a factory. It's one man and a dog without any jobs. And that's the question that I want us to be thinking about, is what is the society that we are building? It's quite right that we should be building development around technology, but let's not forget that we should also build development around people. There are ethical issues and societal issues that need to be dealt with, and let's make sure we don't leave anybody behind. Thank you.